Hello, divas. It's so good to have you here. I feel like spring is coming, and so I'm so glad that you're here and everybody's doing great. I hope. So we are going to be in a new series. I'm calling it Meal Prep. And so really what I want us to do this spring is to get some powerful ideas of ways to make breakfast, lunch, dinner based on our best foods list, and really think about how to make it quick, make it full of nutrition, and really make it yummy. Because if it doesn't taste good, why bother, right? I always say that. When I started Powerhouse Bakery, I said every ingredient has to have a nutritional purpose. If it doesn't taste good, why bother? Because we are here to enjoy all the wonderful flavors that God put on this earth, eat to live and love to eat. So that's my messaging as often as I can celebrate it. So what we're going to talk about today, some of you gals that have been with me for a while will remember some of this, and then I always put a new twist on it because I never want you to get bored. And so we are going to be talking about Breakfast of Champions, and we're going to really look at the Berrilcious power. So looking at how do we use the antioxidant power of berries, how do we use it to not only sweeten but add lots of nutrients, making it quick and handy throughout the week. Even if you don't have fresh berries, what could we do in place of fresh berries, and how versatile they are. And even if we don't have any way to sweeten, the berries do so much for us. And so I want us to really think through, how do we eat more from the earth? How do we get still our nutrition from our breakfast foods, even if it's not the traditional? So I'm going to flip this around, and first we're going to talk about what our best foods list is all about and where do we want to get all the nutrients. So if we think of our best foods list, what are the three categories that we go with?
Protein.
Yes. Ooh, I love it. So we've got the yes, ma'am. She's my star student, Miss Elaine. Protein, carbs, and fats. Why do I only have three categories? What happened to vegetables and fruits? Don't they matter? Bing! Another star student. Exactly. So every food that we eat is going to fall into these categories. And so when we think of typical foods, are they always going to fit into a category cleanly? No, right? Can you think of a food that, gosh, it does a lot of things. It gives us some protein, some fats, and some carbohydrates? Close. Avocado is going to give us some healthy fats for sure, and it is a fruit, even though to us, beans, legumes, peanut butter. Peanut butter is a great example, Miss Elaine, because it gives you protein, gives you fats, it gives you even some carbohydrates. Those that are on a keto diet know that all too well when they try to eat peanut butter and they think, oh darn, it has fat in it. I mean, carbohydrates as well as fat, and that's a resounding yes. And so when we use this, what we want to do is make it personal. So what foods are we going to put in these categories so that they really matter to you? So if you were eating a keto style diet, which means very low in sugars, higher in fats, then we're going to pick these carbohydrates here that just happen to be lower in total sugars or total carbohydrates. Does broccoli have sugar in it? Yes. Do blueberries have sugar in it? Yes. So broccoli and blueberries both fit in the carbohydrate category. Now, the more obvious ones are the grains. And so here we're talking about breakfast, and grains are front and center. When we think of breaking the fast, we think of, oh, we need some good carbohydrates. So give me some examples of some carbohydrates that are in fact going to be really good because they also happen to have some protein and maybe even some fat in them. Bread, oatmeal, yes. And of course, you can pick bread that goes from good and even to great, right? Because of what's in the bread. Can you think of a bread that's good, Like whole wheat bread. It's good. How could I make whole wheat bread great? If it had multi-grains, so more than just wheat, or if it were sprouted grain that made it maybe easier to digest, or maybe if it was organic. So something that would take that grain to the next level. That's what we talk about when we look at going from good to great, is making it somehow have a better quality. And so bread and oatmeal and even blueberries, all of those foods have a lot of room to be improved on. If we're going to do blueberries, how would we take them from good to great? Organic. Yeah, organic. What about frozen? Frozen blueberries. Does this make it go from good to great? Yeah, maybe. Because it sure makes it more convenient. It might make it a little cheaper. Right, and it's already got the organic, cha-ching. So sometimes frozen can be taking it to great, because sometimes fresh is not accessible. And if you're in the throes of cancer treatment, I always tell folks frozen is better, because there's less risk of foodborne illness. These guys have been touched a bit. They're just coming right from nature. We might not even really wash them, whereas going down to freezing temperature will kill a lot of bugs. So hey, that makes it another great. When you're cooking frozen veggies, the trick is to use them in your recipe when they're still frozen. Okay, so put that in your notes, because if you thawed, or if you rinsed, heaven forbid, or you drained any of the frozen, you're losing so many of the nutrients. When the skin is still frozen and you cook it, you're sealing it in. So definitely keep them frozen until you're ready to cook them. So yeah, good to great, so many things. Now, if we were to hop over to the protein category, and let's first keep it really general. What would be some protein foods that you like to have on your list?
Yogurt.
Yogurt, yes. What else? Eggs, beautiful. What else? Chicken, you bet. Fish, of course. And gosh, guys, if we were in another country and talking breakfast, chicken and fish would be on the table, literally. God, that's a good pun, isn't it? Because we are in the U.S., we kind of think in real traditional terms. What are breakfast foods? But if we were eating breakfast in the Mediterranean, which we just left, or even in Asian cultures, it's not uncommon to have a meat item on occasion for the breakfast meal. So I'm glad you're thinking of them. And when we put items in this category, we definitely want them to be something that we're going to use, right? If it's on our best foods list, it's got to be something we like. It's got to be easy to access. It's got to be something that we know how to work with. And so those are really important qualities. Yes, ma'am.
How about cottage cheese and cheese?
Yes, cottage cheese and cheese, of course. Now, let me break those two items out, Miss Rachel, because if we are going to be really specific and we wanted to think of, okay, how am I going to use cottage cheese? It could easily be the center of the plate. For example, in breakfast, if I was going to use cottage cheese, maybe in the same way I might use yogurt, I might put it into a bowl, and then I might put some granola on it, or I might put some fruit on it, right? So we could say that yogurt and cottage cheese might be used in a similar way. And that really makes sense, because we're in this category of thinking, how are we going to use our protein foods? Now, let's take it to the next one that Miss Rachel brought up, and cheese. How are we going to use the cheese? Is it going to be the center of the plate like cottage cheese?
No.
Maybe not, right? Because what if we were to compare calories? If we had a half a cup of cottage cheese or half a cup of cheese, do you think the macronutrients will be the same? No. No, which one's going to be higher in protein? Probably the cottage cheese, right? When you're looking at protein, if you looked at a half a cup of cheese versus a half a cup of cottage cheese, now which one's going to be higher in fat?
Cheese.
Yeah, that one we know for sure, right? The other one in protein, you kind of raised your eyebrow and said, I'm not sure. And that's probably because you don't normally eat a half a cup of cheese, thank goodness, right? But when we're thinking of adding a protein-rich item to breakfast, we think of how are we going to do it? And so cheese might not be the best one, because it's going to force us to eat more cheese in order to get equal amount of protein. But it doesn't mean we can't have cheese. We just are going to use it in a different way. And so as we think of, the best foods list in fats, cheese can live there. Now, oftentimes people that are plant-based or even vegetarian make the mistake of saying, well, I need to eat my cheese for my protein. And I kind of ruin it for them when I say, it's not the best choice. Even when you're trying to avoid animal products or even just meat and muscle meats, cheese won't be a good choice for this category because of the reasons we just said. Now, a similar topic would be on yogurt. There's lots of different yogurts, isn't there? Give me some examples. Yes. So we could go from good to great here too when we're talking about this. Now, granted, there's lots of ways we're going to qualify if something's good or great. If we like it, what if we had dairy intolerance? Well, now it becomes moot because even if we go to Greek yogurt and it doesn't work in our tummy, that's no longer going from good to great. But let's just say for this purpose, we all can tolerate dairy. Greek yogurt becomes a good to great choice, makes it great. Greek is great versus, we'll say, traditional. But if we are trying to avoid dairy for whatever reason, whether we have an allergy or we have an intolerance, this could be a bad choice. So what if we were to do a different variation and say yogurt, taking it from good to great, we want to use it in this capacity, and we're going to pick maybe a plant-based yogurt. What examples might there be? Can you think of one? Cashew? Yes. What would be another one? Soy. Good job. And the one I have today is coconut yogurt. So that would take it from good to great only if I had to stay away from dairy, because what do you think happens to the protein level? It goes down. Yeah. So I might even have to put yogurt over here if it's non-dairy. Because non-dairy definitely is important if we have a dairy allergy. I'm going to give you this just in case it goes off. Thank you. That wasn't me, but it's important because we want to make this customized to us. And if Greek yogurt's not something you're going to ever use, then it sure doesn't belong on your best foods list. And that's why I really want to help you see that your best foods list is very personalized. So if I'm going to put yogurt on here and I want to use coconut, I might even use cashew as my good to greats. Now I'm going to have to put a little note there and say, don't forget, Suzanne, that if you're going to use that as your protein, you sure better make sure you've got something else that's going to help give you some protein for that meal. And while I absolutely believe that we probably had our ideas wrong on how much protein we need, no longer do we say you need a gram of protein per kilogram body weight or any of those big numbers. If we're going to say, let's shoot for 50 grams or so of protein for an average woman of our age, even 40 to 50.
A day.
Yes, a day. Now that's a little bit low when you look at the traditional recommendations. And we're going to keep touching on all these ideas because, again, it makes such an important impact on creating your best foods list. It's like, well, how much protein do I need? And okay, you're probably thinking, well, then couldn't I bring that cheese back? Right? Yeah. And I know. And it doesn't mean you can't, right? Eggs and cheese, right? Exactly. So we could bring it back. The thing we always want to be careful of is when we put something on here, does it have extraneous issues that might bring it down again? Like cheese has a lot of saturated fat. But let's go back to this idea. So if I'm going to use yogurt in place of my dairy to be my protein, I probably have to add something else to it to bump up the protein. What do you think I might add?
Nuts.
Yes, you guys are way too smart. Yes. So nuts can live in two categories also, and so can seeds. So now we're going to go back to the comparison of the cheese. And you're like, yeah, but just like you said, nuts have a lot of fat in it. So why is it going to live in protein versus like a cow cheese? Well, the thought process is that cheese does bring with it a very large amount of saturated fat. Versus nuts and seeds have a blend. They do still have some saturated fats, but they also have a good amount of monounsaturates and polyunsaturates, which helps our body regulate how much of the bad fats stick around. So that gives it a thumbs up, right? So we can put these in the protein category to supplement some of the lower items because it has such a good fat profile. And, same thing with eggs. If we were to look at eggs as far as a protein source, anybody know how much protein is in one egg?
6.
Woo, you guys are good. It's 7 if you count the yolk, but I'm impressed. You're right in the ballpark. And so that's not very much protein when you compare it to, say, a quarter cup of a Greek yogurt that has like in the neighborhood of 14. But when we think of it in context, eggs are still versatile. They're easy to prepare. They're very familiar. And they're a very easy to absorb protein. So even though it's not as high as something like Greek yogurt, it's still a really good choice. And yes, it does have cholesterol, but let's look at the whole saturated fat discussion when the cheese was brought up. Egg is high in cholesterol, but egg is fairly low in total fat. So again, it helps our body regulate how much fat stays around in our arteries and veins when it's not high in saturated fat. It might have cholesterol, but our body's really good at getting rid of cholesterol. So I did a show a long time ago on Great Day SA, The Egg is Back. And it's one of those foods that goes in and out of popularity all the time because we are trying to figure out, is eggs good for you or bad for you? And so I just want to let it rest that eggs are absolutely good for us. Small portions are key, and a good variety of food is key. So that brings us back to our best foods list. So not only should the best foods list be very personal to you as far as what foods go on there, also portion matters. So portion of any food is always going to be key. So now we can bring back that cheese idea and say, well, even if I just have a small amount of cheese and I count it as part of my protein, like Miss Rachel said, she has a little egg and a little cheese together, bang, that's great. Because she's doing a very small amount. And so it's not a 4-egg omelet with 3 tablespoons of cheese plus some avocado plus some sour cream. You get me? Mm-hmm. Yeah. We gotta think of the portions that help us stay in that ideal range for our personal best foods list, okay? And so we didn't even really discuss grains on here. So I'm gonna grab my little eraser and we're gonna just bring up the value of grains, even in the protein category. Now notice I've got grains. We've talked about grains in the carbohydrate category, but what if you were really trying to eat more plant-based and your breakfast didn't include eggs or Greek yogurt, and you wanted to think about where's my protein going to come from? So we could even put some grains over here. What would be some grains that are high in protein?
I would use sprouted legumes.
Sprouted, ooh, love it. Sprouted legumes.
Chickpeas.
Yes. Very good. I know, for breakfast, right? It's not traditional unless you're in the Mediterranean region, and then it's quite traditional. How about some more traditional ones? Oatmeal.
And I like oatmeal, but the steel cut are absolutely wonderful.
Yes. So they do. So texture, as Rachel's mentioning, she likes the steel cut because it's got a really nice chewy texture. I can't wait to show you the bulgur that I created for us for this morning. So bulgur is one that is probably a little more traditional than sprouted legumes. Probably not far though. It's still kind of unusual, right? Kind of exotic to have bulgur for breakfast. But it takes very little time to cook, about 30 minutes. And I'm going to show you how I made it, but I just cooked it with some water and a little bit of salt. And it was basically a 2-to-1. So if I'm going to cook bulgur, I would use 3 cups of water and about 1.5 cups of the grain. Just boil it until the water kind of goes away and the little nuggets are soft. I'm going to pass this around. This is what the bulgur looks like when it's uncooked. So it's very nice. It's very little granules. I think when some of you met with Wendy, one of the other dietitians, she showed you I think a granola, right? That used bulgur?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's a great one. And, you know, when Rachel mentioned the really nice chewy texture of the steel cut oats, but it takes a long time to cook, I think this might be a good option. Takes about 30 minutes and is wonderfully chewy. I added a little bit of oat milk at the end and a little bit of organic maple syrup, and oh my goodness, it's delicious. I could even leave out the maple syrup and I could add some of my berries, which again, you're gonna get to sample. So mixing the foods together and using the antioxidant power of berries along with the sweetness, now you get the high protein joy of a grain. It's very filling, it's nourishing, it doesn't make your blood sugar jump up. And why is that?
It has protein.
Has protein and it's loaded with soluble fiber. So it's a double whammy. Whenever we have a grain that's not simple sugar, that means it's high in soluble and insoluble fiber. And we love that because that slows the absorption. So I'm going to now wipe down our best foods list. And I want to drill in a little bit more to the idea of grains and how we're going to cook them and use the berries. So whether you use oatmeal or bulgur or sprouted lentils, the idea is how do we make it taste good? Thank you, ma'am. Taste good, easy to prepare, something that you can share with your family. It's not too unusual that, you know, the eyebrow raises or the nose crinkles. I don't want that. Right? Even our hubbies are like that, huh? I'm so lucky. My guy will eat anything. But if we do grains plus berries, who can say no to that? Right? Who can say no to that? Now, I also have grains with berries that I've made into a dry granola. So again, you're going to get to sample this. And all these recipes are on the YouTube videos for the Divas and Dudes. So if you go back to those old videos, you're going to find all these recipes. This is the Brazilian granola, and we've done the Berrilicious Oats on another one of the videos, as well as the Berry Crisp, which I'm going to show you today. But just know that these are recipes that you divas have seen, and of course I sell here at Powerhouse Bakery because they really are tried and true. And teaching us Americans that grains with berries not only gives us a great protein source, a great complex carbohydrate, it also tastes amazing, and we don't ever have to add sugar if we don't want to. Now, to warm up the palate, to, you know, we Americans that are used to sweet, we can add a little bit of sugar. Here I've got coconut sugar, and a little goes a long way. You don't need a lot. It has a wonderful aroma. It's a little bit like brown sugar. It almost reminds me of kind of a burnt brown sugar aroma. Love it. And then also adding in seeds and nuts. So this is one of my newest creations. It's called the seedy granola, and all it is seeds. So whenever we do grains, we know that this is going to be protein, it's going to be some healthy fats, and it's going to give us what everybody loves is a good little bit of crunch. And then the berries are going to be some sweet, and it's going to be lots of micronutrients. And if you were with me in this year, we were talking a lot about the health of the gut biome and how important it is to make sure that we have these micronutrients. We've talked about the phytoestrogens and how important those are. Those are nature's way of protecting the plant from the external toxins. And so for us to be able to take these in and really use these nutrients is so powerful. So whether you choose to have them frozen or fresh, it's really important to include them. Don't feel like you have to have a special event to bring out berries. And again, that's why I think having frozen options is so good. And if you were with me on our trip to Turkey, we talked about the pomegranate and how fabulous the pomegranate is. And that's really why at Powerhouse Bakery, my logo is based on the pomegranate, because it's sort of this beautiful treasure chest of nutrients. And Sprouts happen to have these without having to peel them and squirt all over. It's in a little bag. And this was about $3.50, but fantastic way to add in some crunch, but also some fabulous way to flavor and add goodness. And so today what I'm going to do is mix together our berry crisp. I'm going to show you how we make the base and then add the fruit in the center and then add the topping. And know that I'm not even going to measure, because I don't really want you to feel like you have to measure. I want you to go with the look of it, and know that even if you don't have the recipe that is available to you, you can just improvise, because I want you to look at how the ingredients come together. Sound okay?
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to flip over here and do some cooking. Okay, so I want you to see all the goodies I have on my table for our luscious berry crisp. And again, when we're looking at the breakfast of champions, our goal is to use some healthy grains. So I'm using oats, which is really one of the highest protein sources and the best source of complex carbohydrates, which means it's got soluble and insoluble fiber. So oats, which is very familiar to us, is a powerhouse of nutrients. So we definitely want to use that one. And then I've got a little bit of my sweet spice. So if you guys want some of this, let me know. You can special order it and I'll make you a special batch. It is amazing. So when we've gone through all the beautiful aromatic spices, I've done this as well on a video for you. It has things like fresh ground allspice and coriander. It's got a little bit of star anise and cloves and just a fabulous aroma, and loaded with antioxidants. So every time I put an ingredient together, I want it to be something that's going to help your immune system get stronger. And don't forget, sometimes it's also what we don't put in that helps your immune system get stronger. So we want to have very little refined sugars or none, and we want to have very little refined grains if possible. And so that's what we've got. I've got some fabulous earth balance butter, which when I look at the ingredients, this is what the container looks like. It's really mainly organic palm shortening with a little bit of annatto food coloring. So when I look at the ingredients, it has a blend of canola, safflower, flax oils, and then palm oil, water, safflower, a little bit of olive oil, and lecithin. So if I wanted to even go more pure, I could probably use organic palm shortening. Did I put that on there? Yes, I did. Would you? Yes, thank you, ma'am. Perfect, Ann. So the one that you're going to sample today, I actually just used this. And as far as simple ingredients, it doesn't get better. This is organic expeller pressed palm fruit oil. And I love it because it's fairly solid when it's cool out. It'll get soft if it gets warm in here. So just like organic coconut oil, but the palm fruit. And it makes the best frosting if I want to do a classic frosting. It's a blend of saturated and unsaturated fats, which is a good thing. It comes from nature just as it is. So when I compare these, the difference is this one's going to have a little bit of color, so it resembles butter more. It might have a little bit different flavor, a little bit more butter-like, I suppose. But the reality is they're both excellent. Now, they're not cheap, but ounce for ounce, this one's actually a little bit cheaper than this one. So, there's great ways to go. And I want to show you what it looks like when it's all mixed. So I just mixed together my oats and all of my and it makes this wonderful base. And when I put it in there, it's nice and crumbly. And I'm going to make some for you, but I just wanted you to see how pretty it is. Now, if I were to melt the butter, it would not come out this pretty. So I really want to make sure that I have great texture. And the fats that I use need to be fairly solid. And so if it were really warm and this was starting to get melty, I would want to have it cold. So that's just one of the tricks, so that when you do bite into your berry crisp, it has some really nice texture to it. It just doesn't melt and make a goo. Okay, so I'm going to actually I'll just go ahead and mix it in here. So this is the berries that I'm going to use, and this is a nice blend of blueberries and fresh raspberries. And again, we could easily use frozen. I just happened to have some fresh, so I wanted to use it. And every layer of flavor that I'm going to put in here is going to be important in the nutrition as well as the flavor and the texture. So this is, let's see, 1, 2, 3. This is 4 of the little pints of berries. Okay, so just to get a feel for the amount. And now I'm going to add in some coconut sugar. I'm probably going to add about maybe a third of a cup coconut sugar. And again, not obligatory. And I'm going to add some orange juice. A little pinch of salt. And again, the trick with adding a little bit of salt is that means you can use less sugar. Whenever you've got a nice balance of flavors, you use less sugar when you've got a little bit of salt added. And I'm going to use that to my other ingredients as well when I do the base of the oats. This is my sweet spice, and so I'm going to add in a good plenty of this because, again, whenever I can use other flavors, our palate doesn't miss the sweet. So again, this is cloves, allspice. I'm doing about 2 teaspoons. I'm going to mix these together. Get them well coated. Now, you guys that know me well know that I always like to use zest. So if ever going to use juice, you should use zest. Now, I added some fresh orange juice because I really like there to be plenty of juice to go along with it. But I've got my beautiful tangerines, and I'm going to put some zest in there. So anytime you use citrus, make sure you use the zest. There's just something that is so aromatic and special. Now, I did wash the tangerines really well. It's a little bit of mild soap and water because, of course, no doubt plenty of hands and even some maybe herbicides or pesticides might be on this. I can't guarantee that these particular ones are organic, so we wash them really good.
Can you use orange or tangerine?
You can, absolutely. In fact, lemon zest is fantastic too. And it looks like I only have, I do have lemon. I'm telling you, you've got to make sure you've got enough tang with your sweet. So, you're a doll, thank you. So I'm going to put this one in as well. See how much is getting in there? Plenty. In fact, I made a salad last night with quinoa and a bunch of add-ins, but I added a fresh orange, and of course I added all the zest. So in that quinoa salad, I had red onion, I had pine nuts and almonds, and then I had all of the orange segments and all of the zest, and then a little bit of walnut oil and rice vinegar, and oh my gosh, it was delicious. So these are things that should always be in your kitchen. Always have them just on the counter or in your vegetable bin, so you can always have them ready. And now I'm going to add the juice. So making sure that you have both. And whenever you can, just make sure that you have a little container to squeeze so that if any of those seeds come through, you can avoid getting them into your berry crisp. And any good lemon is loaded with seeds. Just like every human, we always have to have a little seediness to keep it interesting, right? Exactly. Okay, so I'm going to hold back the seeds and I'm going to pour in that juice. Beautiful. Okay, so see, that's going to make really good juice. So the other thing that happens is when we put in the citrus, it also pulls some of the berry juice out. So it's really adding some fabulous flavors. All right, that is ready to go. Now I'm going to finish off my base. So I showed you a little bit in there, and I'm going to just go ahead and add in some more. Normally I'd put this in a bowl, but to save space, I want you to see how easy it is. I added about a cup more of oats, and I'm going to add about half of this, my beautiful butter. So about a quarter cup. And then just mash it together. Now at home, you can use a clean hand and just kind of squeeze the fats in with the grain. And it does such a good job just mixing it in. Because again, we don't want it to be too mashed in. You want to have some good little components of the grain and the fat really just holding together. Yeah, that looks beautiful. Now also in my crust, I'm going to add some juice and zest. So here's a little bit of orange juice, just about a tablespoon or so, a little bit of, so you can see this, a little bit of my coconut sugar. So maybe a teaspoon. This is a 2 teaspoon. Have you ever heard of a 2 teaspoon measurer? How weird is that? I keep looking at it and thinking it's a tablespoon. And let's see, let's do a little bit more juice. So anytime we add sugar, like the coconut sugar or the berries, we want to add some tartness to keep it really nicely balanced, and it makes our palate sing. Lots of balance. Okay, that looks beautiful. So I'm just going to make sure the oats are wet. I'm going to tilt this up so you can see it better. And again, you really could do this in a separate bowl. Notice that I had some left over in a little bowl. You could also make some of this in a batch and just have it in the fridge. And oh my gosh, you can use it in so many different ways. You can even just bake it and turn it into a granola, because it's basically some healthy fat, a little bit of sugar and some sweet spice, a little bit of fresh citrus zest. And you can't go wrong with those ingredients, right? We're also going to add a little bit of salt. So again, just a scant of a teaspoon, so not even enough to measure. But again, whenever you're making your oatmeal or you're making any kind of grain, make sure you add in some salt. The bulgur that you're going to taste in a few minutes, I also cooked with some salt. Okay, that looks beautiful. Okay, so now I'm going to save a little bit of it so I can put it on the top of our crisp. I'm going to keep about half a cup. There we go. And now I'm just going to press this out. And look, I'm not using a lot. So you can make it a thicker crust if you want. But when I used to make this for my family, this is an old recipe, I really liked it to be more fruit than oats. And so look how sparsely I'm putting it on the base. Now when my team makes it here, they typically do a little more, but I kind of like it loose like this. And again, there's no rules. You can do it however you want. Now I'm going to drop in the fruit. Look how juicy and luscious. You could even drop in some actual dough. It would be kind of like a, more like a pie, I suppose. But I love it like this. It's just so wholesome. And the oats that I'm using are the instant oats, but you could use the original slow cook. You'd probably just have to cook it a little bit longer. Not much, really. But look how pretty this is. I love it to be juicy. I love it to have lots of the warm spices. So look how pretty that is. Okay, and now we're going to put the little topping on it. Now, if I didn't even have enough of this, but I had some nuts and seeds, could I add that to the top? Of course. So I'm going to do just that. Some of my granola that's called the Brazilian. It has Brazil nuts, maple syrup, and a little bit of dried fruit on the top. And this freezes so well. You could make 3 trays of it and freeze it. And oh my gosh, what a wonderful surprise to be able to open that up. So now I've got a little bit of my seeds, which I've made is pumpkin seeds, sunflower, sesame, flax, chia, hemp, mixed together with a little bit of maple syrup and a little bit of extra virgin palm oil like I showed you. And you can just bake it for maybe 10 minutes at a low temperature, just enough to make it a little bit sticky. So beautiful. So this is ready for the oven. Isn't that gorgeous? Yes, yes. So it's going to cook for probably 20 minutes at maybe 325. If you're using frozen berries, maybe a tad bit longer, but not much, because notice I also didn't make it very fat. It's fairly shallow. And then when we serve it up, it has a really nice texture. It's soft. You still have lots of the berries that are noticeable, and it's just so pretty. Okay, so I'm going to pop this in the oven for us. And in just a minute, we're going to get to sample it. And in the meantime, what else I want to show you is some great ways to use the yogurt and our granolas. So remember I mentioned that we've got this fabulous seedy granola. We've got oat-based granola that you can just cook off the ingredients that I just showed you. It'd be very simple just to be able to do a simple bake-off on a baking sheet. But when we start using our fruit, how can we make this a nice, healthy, layered dish that will be beautiful and easy to even pack? And so using a little bowl of any sort, or you can use the bowls that have the snap-on lid. So here's one that I love, the Pyrex. It's an excellent example. So I'm going to get rid of my coconut sugar. And this is going to be a perfect to-go snack. So first I'm going to make you one in this, and then I'll make another one to go in this container. So here is our coconut yogurt. Now this is fun because of course I do want it to be non-dairy for some people. This coconut yogurt is a great brand. It's called So Delicious. It's a little on the sweet side. So we like to get the plain and the vanilla and mix it together. So what did I just do there? I cut the sugar in half, and then I add some essential oils that bump up the flavor. So anytime you reduce the sugar, you got to add something to make your palate go, oh, okay, I do like this. So adding citrus is a great way to go. If you don't like using the essential oils, zest, fruit, and of course you could add a little maple syrup if you wanted. But start small. Start with a very light amount and you'll just love it. So now I'm going to put in some of my yogurt and some of my granola. And you guys are going to get to sample this, and it's absolutely fabulous. So how simple of a breakfast. Now I could stop here. I could pack it in a container and it would be good for several hours. It's non-dairy, so it's not going to spoil. The risk is that it'll get a little bit soft, but hey, that's a feature, not a bug. It could be delicious that way. It just softens it a little bit. Also, I could add some of my frozen fruit. So even if I wanted to pack it like this, here I've got this beautiful pomegranate. So as simple as opening a bag, adding a couple of tablespoons of my wonderful pomegranate seeds, make a beautiful little dish. So it could be in a to-go container. You know, here at the bakery, we use the little plastic cups that are disposable. Nowadays, though, we love it when we don't waste and have to put something in our big garbage bins. And so using something that's replaceable like this and reusable is wonderful. The other thing that I've got on my table, which I want each of you to have at your house, and that is a way to have your mighty seeds that you can use in lots of different ways. One of our wonderful friends, Amy, did this too, and she is in my Thursday evening class, and she's now using it in lots of things. So it's just ground flax, chia, and hemp, you know, my mighty seed mixture that I have here. I even combined it with a little bit of my sweet spice. So adding some flavor to my healthy seeds makes a wonderful little sprinkle on top. And so you don't have to worry about how much or, you know, what to use it on. Just a little bit here and there, and make sure it tastes good. If you put too much and it's too, you know, sharp of a flavor, you know what to do. Pull back a little bit. And as you get more acclimated to the flavors, you're just going to love having it right at your fingertips to be able to drizzle on. So here I'm going to pack one to go, and I'm going to do the same thing. So about a 1/4 cup of my yogurt. And granted, it's the lower protein yogurt, so I'm going to think to myself, how am I going to get a little extra protein source? I'm going to use my seeds and nuts. So this particular one, as I mentioned, it's only the seeds, but of course I could add in some chopped almonds or walnuts. But I'm going to tell you, when you guys sample this, you're going to love it. And again, it's pumpkin seeds, chia, hemp hearts, flax, sunflower seeds, and sesame seeds. It's got some of my sweet spice and a little bit of an added fat. So the spectrum would work just fine. So simple, so simple. And now if I wanted to add a little bit more color and a little bit more flavor, I could use my beautiful cherries. So the cherries cannot be understated. Oh my goodness, these are beautiful. And I love them to be a little bit frozen. So granted, if I'm going to pack this, it's going to thaw. So, you know, of course, it'd be great to keep them frozen, but it's okay if they're not. Still going to be a wonderful way to have a great snack. So the Cherry Joy is one that I want to show you. I think I erased it. No, I have it on here. So I'm going to give you the recipes, but in general, the Cherry Joy is adding cherries and yogurt and a granola to a wonderful little to-go snack. and it's a powerhouse of the berries and the antioxidants that come with it. And remember that cherries are a really rich source of phytoestrogens. So again, that's the plant's way of sending us lots of nutrition that we really want to make sure that we can enjoy little bits every day. And then when I can add Greek yogurt, or I can add the non-dairy. I love the idea of the cashew yogurt, but adding the pomegranates is going to add us some really good fiber, both soluble and insoluble. And then when I added in my little seed blend, which is the chia, hemp hearts, and flax, it's called the Mighty Seeds, and I added a little bit of the sweet spice, that just gives it one more level up. Again, going from good to great, gives us a great little snack or even a breakfast. And then when you get to sample, you're going to see that this beautiful berry crisp is also going to be loaded with the grains. Okay? So are we ready to have some samples? Awesome. Thank you so much for having fun with me in the Powerhouse Bakery Kitchen, and let's get some snacks going.